And welcome to the September edition of Cinema for the Culture, a signature event of the African Film and Arts Foundation. This month, we screened a series of films celebrating musicians and genres across the diaspora that shaped generations. And the films included The Story of Lover's Rock, My Friend Fela, and The Apollo. My name is Mojisola Shinoiki, and I'm the founder and executive director of the African Film and Arts Foundation. So a little bit about the foundation. The African Film and Arts Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit media arts organization based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Our mission is to create a platform to promote, showcase, and support content that depicts Africa and its diaspora family in all its brilliance. Today, we are pleased to have with us Mr. Billy Mitchell, AKA Mr. Apollo, who was featured in the film, the documentary, The Apollo. Our moderator for this evening is Osei, Kweku. A little bit about the film. Filmmaker Roger Ross Williams, who's the director, looks at the storied history of the iconic Apollo Theatre while following the Apollo's inaugural staging of Ta-Nehisi's quotes, "A Claim Between the World and Me." So that's just a little bit about the film. Our first guest, Mr. Billy Mitchell, AKA Mr. Apollo, is the Apollo Theatre's tour guide, historian, and lifelong legend. From running errands for James Brown to producing the legendary Amateur Night, Billy Mitchell is the man at the Apollo Theatre and the walking encyclopedia of all things Apollo. Welcome, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Billy.
Thank you so much, Moji. It's my pleasure being here with you and Osei. Yes, my pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Yes. Our moderator, Osei Kweku, is an international on-air talent at the #1 radio station here in Atlanta, Georgia, V103. He's also the creator of V103 International, the only station in the United States that has an active partnership with other radio stations in Africa, with a hyper focus in Nigeria. That's the Beat 91.9, as well as the UK. So welcome both of you, and thank you very much for being here.
Yes, pleasure.
So Mr. Mitchell, I will hand you over into the capable hands of Osei, and I will see you in about 30 minutes. I'll come back on.
Thank you, sister.
Okay.
Mr. Mitchell, thank you so much. And we give thanks to the ancestors for allowing us to be present. As I said, man, I love what you're wearing. I love the regalness of it, and it's fitting. So you today, and for 50 plus years have been the griot at the Harlem Apollo Theater. And so I wanted to just kind of really open things up and just understanding you. I mean, reading about your story is amazing. Stories like that aren't necessarily happening in this day and age. You know, interns have a lot more privilege and rights than they may have had during your heyday, but you turned that opportunity, that magical moment, into something lifelong. When you reflect on it, Mr. Mitchell, just kind of talk about that beginning, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you, brother. You know, what I like to share with the family is that I was not born in Harlem. My mother was born in Harlem, so her spirit, it's all in me, right? But I've always had this attraction to Harlem. I was born and raised in a small town not too far from Harlem called Mount Vernon, New York, right? It's about a 35-minute drive from Harlem, right? And I'm one of eventually 14 children. We were very, very poor. There were times when my family was separated. I was in different foster homes from age 8 till I was 12, and things like that. So, but let me just show you how I got to the Apollo Theater. My family was evicted from the building we were living in Mount Vernon. After my mom had gotten me and my brothers back, my dad took some of my sisters and left us forever, so we were all scattered, right? And when I got out of foster care at age of 12, me and my another brother were the only oldest kids at home. My oldest brother went with my grandparents, my oldest sisters went with my dad. So I became one of like the heads of the family at a young age. And we moved from Mount Vernon because our building was getting ready to be condemned. We moved from Mount Vernon to the South Bronx. And it was one day, and that was in 1964. And one day in 1965, my mom asked me to leave our place in South Bronx and go down to Harlem and borrow $20 from her cousin. My mother's cousin lived directly across the street from the backstage door of the Apollo Theater at that time. So when I went there to get the $20, my mom's cousin wasn't home. So I waited for her outside the backstage door of the Apollo Theater, hoping that she would come home. And while waiting there, the owner of the Apollo comes out and he offers me a job to run errands for people who were inside rehearsing for a big concert that night. Imagine 1965, right? Now, the owner of the Apollo in 1965 was a Jewish guy named Frank Schiffman. They owned the theater from 1934 until 1977, actually. But he saw me back then. He offered me a job to run errands for people, and I started running errands that day. I did it so well that they allowed me to come after school. I would take the bus from the Bronx down to the Apollo. I would come on the weekends. Whenever I needed money, I would go to the Apollo Theater and run errands for, James Brown and the Motown acts and Ray Charles and Flip Wilson. You're talking about 1965. So that was my initial point of giving service to the Apollo Theater. I never like to say I work at the Apollo. I like saying I give service to the theater. And that's how it started, 1965.
Understanding how you came through in such an interesting time, what was your life like in foster care to have been broken up from your family? Yeah. And still you have a very positive, calming spirit, Mr. Mitchell. So how were you able to maintain all of that, even in that reconnection? What was that time period like for you?
It was tough because you always wanted to be with your family and your friends, and to be taken away at 8 years old. I was 8 years old when I was taken away. One of my brothers because they kept three of us together. One was 10 and the other was 6. So, we always was longing for, where's my mommy? Where's my other brothers and sisters? Where's, our folks in Mount Vernon? Because we were in 3 different cities, White Plains, New York, New Rochelle, New York, Greenburgh, New York, and eventually they allowed my mother to have visits with us, right, at a special location in White Plains. It was like the Human Resources Administration building. And we would meet my mother thinking that she'd come to get us, right? And every time we met with her, she was leaving, but not without us. And it hurt us because we were in one foster home where they literally abused me and my brothers, physically abused us. They would beat us if we did something that they didn't like, because we were the foster kids. We weren't part of their real nucleus family. And I remember they used to make us take off our clothes, and our foster parent, he had a long razor strap, that they would, and he would make us bend over and he would beat us, right? And you at a young age. And then when we would have visits from relatives to that house, they would make it all look like everything was cool. But they made us live up in the attic of that house. They had a 9-bedroom house. The guy was a very affluent lawyer, but he made me and my brothers live up in the attic. But when someone would come and visit, he would bring us down into rooms that were nice and spotless, wood, shiny floors. But it was eventually my brother, he ran away from there at a very young age. He actually ran away from New Rochelle to Mount Vernon. And when they returned him, to our foster home, man, they beat him. And then I remember the son hitting my brother in the stomach so hard that my brother's wind was knocked out of him and he dropped to the floor. You're talking about, he was like 10 years old. Maybe my brother was probably about 11 or 12 at the time. But it was tough. We were in other foster homes that they just put us in a room and let me and my brother stay there, But eventually my mother was able to get some of us back. Some of my brothers were, one of them was adopted. Another was in foster care in upstate New York, and eventually my mother started having more children. After we, I would come out of foster care and I finally got three more brothers and sisters. So when we taken away, it was 9 of us. And when I finally got home, my mother, there were 14 altogether.
It's an amazing story, Mr. Mitchell, and kind of fast forwarding. I'm really interested to understand like these interactions with some of the biggest celebrities of that time on a global scale. Obviously, I mean, what's it like for a young Billy Mitchell to meet James Brown? What is that first conversation like? What is Mr. Brown's presence like? How is he moving? I've heard the legend of him on stage with his band and he plays no games, but just engaging somebody who was also a voice for Black people around the world at that time.
Absolutely.
Talk about that.
Well, when I first met Mr. Brown, and incidentally, he always called me Mr. Billy. He never called me Billy. He called everybody Mr. in front of their names. And when I would run errands for his band, because I think he had a personal chef, but when I would run errands for members of his band, Mr. Brown would always come and talk to me. And of course, he performed at the Apollo Theater on a regular basis, because whenever Mr. Brown and his band performed at the Apollo Theater, the place was always sold out. I knew I was going to make some nice tips. So I made sure I kept my behind right there. And whenever I would see Mr. Brown, he would always ask me, how was I doing in school? Osei, every time I saw Mr. Brown, how's school coming along, Mr. B? How's that work coming along, Mr. B? And it got to a point where I said, damn, I don't want to see this guy again, man. He keep talking about school, man. I don't want to talk about no damn school, you know? But right. I kept telling him I was doing well. And then one day, brother, it's in my book. I have an autobiography I'll call, They Call Me Mr. Apollo. But in my book, I talk about this one day that James Brown made me leave the Apollo Theater because I was telling him I was doing well. And apparently he didn't believe me because he made me go get my report card and bring it back and show it to him. And when I showed it to him, he noticed that I had failed all my subjects because I was failing everything. When my family moved from the Bronx, from Mount Vernon to the Bronx, it was a new environment. I wasn't dressing like the kids in the neighborhood. They had on Converse sneakers and I had on track flats. They had on the latest shirts and pants. I had on some raggedy, probably hand-down clothes. So I was bullied and teased a lot. And because of that, I didn't pay attention in class. And that caused me to fail all the tests. But one day after seeing my report card, Mr. Brown told me that I was not allowed to come back and run errands at the Apollo and make that money until I can prove that my grades had gone up by the next report card. Not next year, by the next report card. And brother, let me tell you, that scared me so much because I was making a lot of money running errands. I was helping out my mother pay the rent. I was bringing home food, bags of food at 15 years old, 16 years old. I was able to buy a new shirt so the kids in the Bronx wouldn't tease me, or some new pants. And that was all going to be taken away if I didn't get my grades up. So that threat Mr. Brown gave me, it really stuck me because at that time, I didn't know whether James Brown was not the owner of the Apollo for him to tell me I wasn't allowed to come back or just a performer, because I was young. I didn't know the full who James Brown was, right? And I figured he must be somebody to tell me that I wasn't allowed to come back and run errands until my grades got up. So that prompted me to go to school the next day. And I'll like it was yesterday. I went to school the next day. The teacher was teaching something and I didn't understand because I had fallen so far behind. So I reluctantly started raising my hand and asked her to explain stuff to me. But I was also cognizant of my classmates watching me. And I thought they were going to laugh at me and call me stupid because they had a nickname. They was calling me Stinky Boy. I was known as Stinky Boy. But I thought they was going to call me Stinky Stupid Boy because I was asking questions. But I found out that my classmates, a lot of them, they didn't understand what the teacher was teaching either. So they started raising their hand, asking for help. And before you know it, it became a thing in our classroom. If we didn't understand something, we would raise our hand. So I applied what the teacher taught me to the test. And I went from failing everything to being on the honor roll. And I kept my grades up all through high school. When I graduated from high school, I had mentioned to Mr. Brown that on a date that he was playing that I had finally graduated. And he says, what are you going to do? I said, well, I want to go to business school. He said, well, you know, that costs money. You have any money? I said, no, sir, I don't. And that he reached into his pocket, Osei, and he pulled out this big knot of money and he started peeling off 20s, 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 and a couple of 50s. So I saved that money that James Brown gave me that man. I saved that along with some money that Marvin Gaye had given me on another occasion. And that was, I took that money and I enrolled in a business school in New York City on 23rd Street and Lexington Avenue. And I became a credit analyst for banks, thanks to them giving me that money so I could start my education off.
You know, it's not every day, Mr. Mitchell, everybody can mention names like James Brown and Marvin Gaye.
I know.
Being a part of their story. And I really find it fascinating also that you went from being a failing student to the historian that you evolved into. And I really think it's a testament to understanding never giving up, especially on us as Black people, right? Because you really never know. And one of the things that really touched me in the documentary was the fact that it talked about present day and what was going on with the Trayvons and the Eric Garners and all of these things that have happened. You know, I went and lived in St. Louis for about 4 years, and a large part of it, I was working for a media company there, an iHeart, and I told them that I wanted to understand Mike Brown's death. So you are someone who has always kind of been, in my opinion, just at the epicenter, because the artists that you dealt with a lot of sensitive subject matter. You know, I noticed one of the things that they noted about Ella Fitzgerald was she was singing protest music.
Oh yeah.
And it's interesting to hear that defined. When you look at things now, Mr. Mitchell, in terms of how Black men and women are being killed in the streets, and you think about the era in which you grew up in during segregation and Jim Crow and all of these things.
Yes.
What comes to mind when you think about those things and the parallels in terms of those worlds now and then?
Well, you know, I grew up, you know, I'm 71 years old now, brother, right? And I grew up during the civil rights era, and I protested, I marched. I was at the March on Washington on August 28th, 1963, when I was 13 years old. I went there for the wrong reasons, though. Me and my guys, we liked these girls that lived in our neighborhood in Mount Vernon, right? And their parents were members of the NAACP. And they would take people on a bus ride to march on Washington. So me and my boys, we wanted to hang out with the little cuties, right? So that was my reason for going to the March on Washington. But on the way back, the adults started explaining to us why we went there. Housing, to get the right to vote, to get education, to get respect, equality. And these are things that I didn't take into consideration as a young kid. But those things prompted me to get more involved and become more conscious of what goes on in this country called America, you know, and how it all started, this experiment of them taking our ancestors from our homeland and bring them here so that our ancestors could work for them so they can make money. The Europeans, I'm referring to, they. And so as I got older, I started getting more involved. You mentioned Ella Fitzgerald singing. Billie Holiday did the same thing. Billie Holiday had a song out, a protest song called Strange Fruit, which they would not allow her to sing anywhere. But the owners of the Apollo let her sing at the Apollo Theater on the first time it was sung out in the public, because it talks about Black men being hung by poplar trees by racist whites. And that was taboo back then, you know. So Billie Holiday came out with that. So there were a lot of people that came out with protest movie, you know, songs and things like that. You know, you don't talk James Brown, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. You know, Sam Cooke, A Change Is Gonna Come. You know, Bob Dylan, you know, he used to have protest songs. You know, Joni Mitchell. There, I came up in that era where we were marching constantly. I thought that Jim Crow was a guy that nobody liked in my hometown of Mount Vernon, because I remember walking around with my friends, you know, protesting, Jim Crow must go, Jim Crow. I thought it was some dude that nobody liked. I did not know that there were laws back then, Jim Crows. Whites can do this or go in this place. Blacks, they had their own place, they couldn't go in this place. So those were the Jim Crow laws that we were protesting, but I didn't know that as a 13, 14-year-old kid. I thought Jim Crow was a guy that nobody liked. So you get older and you start becoming involved and you go to meetings. I used to go to Black Panther meetings, you know, not being a Panther, I would just go because I was becoming more socially conscious of what was going on. And that has stuck with me all these years. I pass it on to my children and grandchildren and great-grands, the importance of us not thinking that we, in my opinion, I could be totally wrong, we've been fighting for equality in this country since they brought us here. right? I doubt, it's just me, I doubt if we will ever, ever, ever get equality to the Europeans. I hope and I pray that we will get justice. I'm more, back then there was Dr. King and there was Malcolm. Dr. King was about civil rights, so that they would have to pass laws so we can have the same thing as our white brothers and sisters. Can you imagine laws? Why couldn't we just have the same thing as everybody else? Malcolm was about human rights. Yeah. I'm a human. Treat me the same as you, because you're a human. See, those are the contradictions up there, but they all wanted the same thing for us as a people. And you know, we all want the same results, but they just had different strategies. Malcolm and I got the chance to meet Dr. King only once. I used to see Malcolm speaking in Harlem back in the day. I used to see Malcolm out the street.
Yeah, it's crazy just hearing you kind of speak to some of these things. You know, I recently saw the documentary Blood Brothers with Malcolm and Muhammad. It was very powerful. And, you know, understanding the era that you were a part of, grew up in, and even, you know, getting involved in the Apollo, understanding that there was a white owner initially, I guess Frank Schiffman. What was that time period like? Did the Apollo ever engage? You know, I did a TED talk and I was talking about the Cotton Club, and I know they used to have the brown paper bag test there. Did they do that at the Apollo at any point in time as well?
No, not that I know of from the time I was there. I know the building itself, which is located in Hollywood, was built in 1914, and it wasn't called the Apollo Theater at that time. When the building was built in 1914, it was a segregated burlesque house known as Hertig and Siemens New Burlesque Theater. And blacks weren't allowed in there to sit down and see shows, perform on the stage, or work in that burlesque house. And it was largely because Harlem was different in 1914 and prior than it is right now. Everybody likes to associate Harlem with being, you know, a black community, but Harlem was first Irish on the west side, Italian, Latino on the east side. That's where they got the name Spanish Harlem, Little Italy. That's the east side of Harlem. Now, where the Apollo Theater is located right now, that was all Dutch and Jewish. The word Harlem is Dutch. See, there's a city in the Netherlands called Harlem, spelled Haarlem. And it was also the Dutch that were part of the people that initially brought our ancestors to the shores of New York in slavery. And they took over this island from these Indians. The island was called Manhattan, and they renamed it Manhattan. And then they decided to name that area New Amsterdam, Dutch. And because the Dutch had to deal with the British to also bring enslaved Africans to that area, they, as a gift to the Duke of York, they named it New York.
Yeah.
See, people got to understand, you know, how these things happen in life. We take things on the face of it, but I like to check out and study where it came from, how it came to be, because we accept the okie doke all the time without asking questions or saying why, or I ain't putting up with that crap, you know. So
it's amazing, you know, to hear you kind of speak, and that kind of brings me to another point. I want to just understand your connection to the continent now, right? Because, you know, clearly, you know, you're a king and you are dressed as such. And I know that, you know, we were having a little bit of conversation and you were talking about your trip. Talk about, as a historian, to go, because I don't think a lot of people oftentimes, for many of our brothers and sisters who have never had the opportunity to travel home, I really think it's something that everybody must do. Regardless of what you've been told, I really feel like that trip is a very powerful and necessary experience for yourself, right? Because it's an awakening that you can't get. What was your first trip to the continent like? And I know you went to the slave dungeon.
Yes, I did. My first trip was to Ghana, and I went there because I have friends that are African American who left America and moved out there, and they're building a whole community. I mean, businesses and things like they got connections with the prime minister. They're advisors to the president. So, you know, I went there with some friends that are in good positions there, and just to learn. And just to be back to let my ancestors know that I'm coming back. I haven't forgotten you. I know you made it to these shores of North America so that I am who I am right now. Somebody in my ancestry made it on those boats, somebody. Mm-hmm. And so I was going back to let them know, thank you, and that I will carry your spirit with me forever. I don't just wear what I have on just because we're on this talk show. I wear something Afrocentric every day of my life as respect to the ancestors. So we went to Ghana, my wife and I, and we also went there to reunite our wedding vows, our 35th wedding vows. So we had it done there by my friend who is, he's a rabbi. He's a Black Jew, he's a rabbi. And I didn't care who, I just wanted to renew my vows with my girl, right? So we went out there, man, we had a lot of people there, man. It was the most beautiful thing. And as you said, we went to the dungeons, we went to places, and we were learning as we went there. And I found out, my brother, I thought I knew a lot about, Black history living in America, right? Because we're fed stuff.
Yes.
We're fed, they're talking about the big lie with the other dude. We as a people, we are fed a lot of lies. And you will only get the truth by going to the source. So I went back to Africa. I learned from my brothers and sisters in Africa, the scholars, about us here in America and how we have been, okey-doke, bamboozled, led astray, as Malcolm said. And we'll get some so-called Black nationalists here in America, think they know so damn much about us. They only know what the Europeans have written in books, and they were able to read it and they were able to articulate it, but it may not be the truth. So that's been my experience. I was so glad to go to Ghana. It literally changed my life. I feel that I'm different. My family and friends tell me that you seem a little different. My supervisor, Paul, said, Billy, you seem a little different now. You came back from Africa. You're speaking up, because I'm very mellow. I normally don't, but I'm tired of being taken advantage of. I'm tired of our people, being stepped over and think that, I know what you're doing to me, but I'm not going to say nothing. Well, I'm that type now that I'm at that age now. If you're doing something wrong, I'm going to say something. Yes. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the one that pays my paycheck or whatever. And that's just me. I think sometimes I feel that I'm going sometimes a little overboard, but it's this freedom that's over me, man. You know,
I love it.
It's this freedom that you can't get, because sometimes we're afraid to say something because it may cost us our jobs. It may cost our safety. I'm 71 years of age. The Creator's let me live this long. I have more years behind me than I have in front of me. And my remaining time on this earth and in this body is going to be nothing but freedom and serenity and peace, and I vow to do that. I feel so good. I've changed so much because my spirit is now full. It's been fed. And I urge everybody that's listening, that's African Americans. I know everybody can't afford to just get up and go to Africa. I'm not, I ain't gonna trip and tell you do that. But if you can, you need to go back home. Let the ancestors thank them for making across that middle passage. Somebody made it across, and just go back, man. You'll feel so much better. I promise. People, including myself, I would go to Puerto Rico. I would go to I take Turks and Caicos. I would go to Aruba. And then I said to my wife, damn, when we gonna go to Africa, girl? She said, I don't want to go to Africa. I said, stop believing what they've been feeding us. It ain't all about lions, tigers, and bears, because that's the picture. Everybody's in the jungle. They confuse Kenya with Nigeria and Ghana. They didn't kill up all the animals in Ghana and they poached them, and a long time ago. You know what I mean?
Right. No, that's beautiful.
You got to stop me, brother, because I'll keep talking.
Listen, I love hearing you speak, Mr. Mitchell, and I think that when you're when you're around the elders, you just need to soak up as much game as you possibly can, because these moments aren't promised to us. And I feel like just hearing you speak on it, I'm sure you enjoyed the food. Did you eat some jollof?
Brother. I ate at Abel's Table. So it's a well-known restaurant and resort.
Right.
I eat there.
Right.
So we ate, at people's homes, we visited homes that were people that were very, not maybe affluent, but they were doing okay. And we also visit places where people were still living in huts.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I was literally shocked. I could not believe I was there in 2019. I could not believe that people were still living like this day and age. But I found out that if you have nothing to contribute to their government, they're not going to give you resources, no housing. They're not going to build your roads for you. So people were still living off the land. They would go out and fish in the ocean, they would grow their vegetables, and then the kids would walk 3 miles to a school. So we made sure, my wife and I made sure that on the tours that we would visit several schools, and we would give donations to each school. And it was just a few dollars to us, but it was major to them.
Yeah. And
damn, man.
Everything you're saying, Mr. Mitchell, and I know people don't understand how important it is for us as Africans and African Americans, how much the world will change when we finally connect in the real way. Brother. You know what I mean? And I think that's what the ancestors have been really saying to us for a long time. But it took us, it's not a coincidence that 2019 was the 400 years. So that understanding and that you went on that time is a blessing. And, I understand. I know Moji is back, and we could do this all day. Mr. Mitchell, man, much love and respect, you know what I mean, to you, and blessings to you, man. Thank you. I hope I can meet you one day in person.
Brother,
yeah. We must meet.
Live in Stone Mountain, so when I come and visit her, man, I'm gonna holler at you, Emoji. We get together.
Please do.
If you're ever in New York, see, the theater's not open yet to the public fully, but we're about to open up very, very shortly with new concerts, and I start giving my new tours. I give virtual tours of the Apollo Theater every day. Go to the Apollo Theater website, apollotheater.org. They're given on Mondays at 11 a.m. and Thursdays at 6 p.m.
Oh, so wow.
Sign up, you get a virtual tour that I put together because I had to pivot, after the pandemic. If I want to keep that check coming in, I got to start doing something for my employer.
Bonafide hustler, I love it.
I created this virtual tour that is taking off. It's really, so we're going to keep it in there. Once we do reopen, I'll continue to do the walking tours on site, but we're going to continue with the virtual tours as well, because there's a lot of content on the virtual tour that you won't see on the walking tour, but
let's get some Afrobeat artists in there, that Mr. Mitchell. Let's get some Afrobeat on that stage.
We've had them, brother. Yeah, we've had Burna Boy, we've had so many Afrobeat songs. There's a brother named Sparky Martin. He's a promoter. He's trying to open up America's eyes to all the great African musicians that are out there, and singers and bands and whatnot. And just Google, his name is Sparky Martin. You may want to connect with him. This guy is he was once the manager of the Apollo Theater years ago, but he's very, very involved in the connection with Africa and the States.
Yeah,
Sparky Martin is his name.
Sparky Martin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sparky Martin. All right. Okay, and then what's the link for the virtual tours?
You go to apollotheater.org and just scroll down, and it says Apollo Virtual Tour, and then that shows you how to join in and how you can. It's a small fee, and it lasts for at least an hour. There's a Q&A at the end of the tour as well, and being the Apollo Digital Archivist, we put it all together. He had all the content, and I had all the knowledge and the history of the theater, so we combined them both, and it's a fun time and very, very educational. I poured my soul into it. And it's taken off. It's made the Apollo a lot of money when we weren't making any money at all this year. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yes,
but yeah, we can definitely help promote that. We can put that in our newsletter.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I'll follow up with you on that. So a few questions from the audience. A question, how has being part of the Apollo family shaped you as a person, Mr. Billy?
Well, you know, the people in Harlem, because I've been working there working in so many different jobs. I've had about 7 positions at the Apollo, from from running errands to managing a store, to help produce amateur night, group sales, coordinating movies for kids. You know, I have several positions, stagehand for Showtime at the Apollo. But the people in Harlem started calling me Mr. Apollo. And I've never called myself that. Never. I've never introduced myself as, hello, my name is Mr. Apollo. I've never, ever done that because I know I am. I'm Billy Mitchell, right? But the title Mr. Apollo is just a title. That's why in my autobiography, They Call Me Mr. Apollo.
Oh, yeah.
That's the title of my book, you know. You can get it on blurb.com, BLURB.com. They Call Me Mr. Apollo.
Okay, but how has it shaped you as a person?
You know, it's opened up doors for me. I've gotten a lot of notoriety all over the world, literally, because people come to the Apollo Theater. You know, they videotape it. You know, producers ask me to be interviewed. So this year I on the Grammys, I presented Beyonce and
nice.
Megan Thee Stallion with the Grammy this year. You know, virtually from the Apollo. I was asked to do that. So I've been in documentaries, not just the Apollo other documentaries, but it's opened up, you know, I can walk down the streets of Harlem and, you know, people, hey, Mr. Apollo, you know, I'm telling you, sis, it is, my family drops my name all the time. It opens up doors for them. But it's all good. It's all good because I know who I am, you know, and I'm very, very grateful for the blessings the Creator continuously gives me. You know, continuously. So I know where it's coming from. So I'm not going to think I'm the man because I know who the man really is. I know.
Okay. Another question is about the Harlem Cultural Festival.
Yes.
Did the Apollo have anything to do with that, or did you attend that festival?
In 1969?
Yes, there's a documentary out about it called
Yes, I was there. Yeah, I was there. It was over 3 weekends. It wasn't just done one day. It was happening over 3 weekends. I was there. I was 19 years old. It was done in 1969.
There's a documentary out about it called The Soul.
I saw it. I was looking for myself on the screen. I couldn't see myself. I was probably somewhere smoking weed, knowing me back then, you know.
But that was amazing that was shot 50 years ago and nobody ever saw the footage.
It was something I thank Brother Questlove for, you know, taking the initiative to go and purchase that from the owners and then turn to what he did, you know, because those of us that are still alive, we remember that those times. We had afros back then, you know. We're trying to dress like the guys from British. Some people were wearing afros and dashiki. Some were wearing bell-bottom British pants, you know, and all that. But it was a time in our life. Some people were finally getting socially conscious even more. In 1969, you know, I've seen everybody there. Yeah. I used to see Fela at the Apollo. I seen Miriam Makeba, Hugh Masekela. Usa Ndur, you know, I think I'm missing the name, pronounce the name, but I've seen so many African artists at the Apollo Theater, and they're always sold out, always.
Yeah, I think that documentary was called, it's called The Summer of Soul.
Yeah, but check this out, Muji. It was reason why they did that because that same year, up in Woodstock, New York,
yes,
they had the Woodstock concert, which I also attended. So, but the Woodstock concert was not in the city of Woodstock, New York. It was on a farm outside, but they named it the Woodstock Festival. Those are things that people don't know either. You know, they just labeled the Woodstock, but it wasn't done in the city of Woodstock, New York. It was on a farm outside of Woodstock, and it was raining like crazy that entire weekend. And we were all tripping off whatever we were putting into our bodies and whatnot, just hallucinating. And it was weird. It was weird. But I was able to do that concert and the one in Harlem. Yep.
Yeah, so the Woodstock one, that was publicized.
Oh, God.
But the Harlem one wasn't. 50
It
years.
It was just for our people, though. There was a letter of love to our people. And even though there were, European white brothers and sisters, that attended these concerts, it was just for us because it was done in the middle of Harlem. And, we used to call it Mount Morris Park, but now it's called Marcus Garvey Park.
Yes, in Harlem. Okay, last question. So have you you said you have a book that tells your story, but have you had a documentary about you made?
You and I talked about this before, right? I don't have a document. People film me. I've been approached by people even in Hollywood to do a documentary. I have not given it real serious thought. I've given it thought because that would be something new for me. And I don't want to get bitten by not having knowledge. I don't want to be taken advantage of by not having knowledge. So over the last couple of years, I've been looking for a semi-entertainment lawyer to represent me in the event that somebody, I do want to sign the dotted line, but that is something because even though it's me, the story is so compelling and interesting, people won't even believe what I've been through and how blessed I am and how totally grateful I am to even be alive. To even be alive, sis, and that's real talk. I've had some ups and downs in my life, but I'm just so grateful to even be able to talk to you right now. So
thanks for that.
I'm very grateful. As soon as I wake up, as soon as I open my eyes, I say, "Oh, thank you. Ooh, thanks." Let me tell you, sis, because people die in their sleep.
Yes,
and they're in perfect health the day before. And
hey, Moji, can I ask Mr. Mitchell, who would you want to play you if your life story was brought to the screen?
You. I want you, my brother. Nobody could do it but you, brother. You know what I'm saying?
Osei, are you going to take that up?
Hey, listen, Mr. Mitchell, you know how to talk that talk, man.
Hey, man, listen, brother. I want you to play me, man. You're a good-looking brother. We got the same features a little bit. You look like you could be related to Idris Elba. Have people told you that before?
That's true, Osei.
You look like Idris, man.
You do.
And I've seen him in person. You got that Idris look, bro. Because I want somebody handsome play me, even though I ain't that kind of good-looking guy,
Mr. Mitchell, man, I love your spirit, sir.
Yes, sir. I would ask Denzel. Denzel and I grew up together in Mount Vernon, that small town. I grew up with Denzel Washington. That's the reason why I became an actor, following behind Denzel. And the first movie that I ever did, in which I had an actual speaking part, and you saw me, was in a movie with Denzel. And that movie was called Malcolm X. So if you look at Malcolm X, you'll see me in it, but probably didn't know it was me because I had a mustache back then, and we did that.
I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it again tonight, Mr. Mitchell. I got to see it.
You'll see it. It's right after Malcolm and Betty were dating, and the guy used to play Raj on What's Happening. He comes to Malcolm, you got to come. Brother Johnson was just hurt. And I'm explaining to Malcolm what happened. I said, Malcolm, the brother was just standing there and he didn't move quick enough for that old fake cop. And they bust him upside his head. Now, what you gonna do about it? So check out your boy.
You remember the words.
I love it.
Because people ask me to recite them. Whenever people see me on the street, they said, Billy, was you in Malcolm X? I said, yeah. I said, what was your line? They said, that was you. That's right. That was you. I said, yeah, that was me at a very young age. Thanks to my brother Denzel, he'll never admit that he was able to get me that part. I used to, see Spike at the Apollo. I would approach him, and he would like diss me, kind of, Yeah, he would. He really. But we cool now. But back then, everybody would come up on Spike. Hey, brother, I'm an actor, man. I would love to work with you, man. Blah blah blah. Yeah, man. And one time I said, well, I'm a good friend of Denzel's. He said, well, everybody's a friend of D's, like that. Boom, diss me. So I contacted them. I said, yo, man, I'm trying to get in this movie, man. Your brother Spike is acting real crabby, bro. And Denzel said, I just Spike, and he just left it at that. So I said, well, I'm not going to use our friendship to ask for it. I've never done that with Denzel. But the next day I get a call from the casting agent asking me to come down and read for that part. And before you know it, I'm in a big trailer with security guard me to rehearse my little lines. Yeah.
You've got to use your connection.
I've never shared with anybody before. You guys have just got a scoop.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I never talk about me and Denzel's relationship. Everybody knows that we're good friends. I was with him just about a month ago. He told me years ago, stay out of my business because people are going to try to get to me through you.
But that's true.
And they did. It's been happening for year after year, including the Apollo. One day he did me he did a big favor for the Apollo because they were trying to get him and they couldn't. And I made that call and brother came through like a champ and made them take care of me too.
Get the cash.
We could talk,
Mr. Mitchell.
My brother.
Love it.
Love you, brother.
We could go on. We could actually just stay here and talk. But one last thing, Mr. Billy, before you go, please give upcoming creatives some inspiring words, please.
I would suggest to upcoming creatives that, you have to continue to work hard. Respect your craft, whatever it is. Respect it. Do your homework. And you never know when that blessing is going to come. Because just when you've worked hard and you've worked even harder and you are just about to give up, just when you're about to give up, that's when that blessing came along and you blew it because you gave up, because you let somebody else tell you what your worth is. I was rolling like that for a long time myself. Even at the Apollo, I've had ups and downs at the Apollo Theater. It's not always been gravy for me at the Apollo Theater. There were days I didn't even want to go to work. Literally, there were days I wanted to retire. And that was not too long ago. But then when this pandemic hit, I felt that the theater needed me. I can't turn my back on a place that's been so good to me. And then they started asking me to do things for the Apollo. Even the Apollo asked me to do this interview. How can I turn my back on a place that's been so good to me and that I love so much? People come and go, but all those great performers that have rocked that stage, they've had 3 different owners since I've been there. Jewish people, a Black brother who's my mentor, and now the building's owned by the state of New York, even though we run it as a non-for-profit. But I've seen that place go through so much, but I'm just so grateful. I've had other jobs before coming to the Apollo, but none of them have been more fulfilling than what I do at the Apollo, because I'm educating people on the history. Like brother called me, some people call me a Harlem Apollo Griot, and I'll wear that title, because I know more about the theater right now than anybody alive. Literally, anybody alive. Because I've seen stuff since 1965. There are people that's still alive who went to concerts at the Apollo, but they didn't work to see what was going on backstage. And the things with the artists that I saw, I got some stories. Oh, some stories I'm gonna take to my grave too.
Those are the ones we want to hear about, though.
Oh man, some stuff I'm taking to my grave. No, snitches get stitches,
Oh my God, this has been fantastic. It's really made my evening. Yes. I'm so glad to have connected with you, Mr. Billy. Osei, thank you very much. You always come through. Osei is one of our board members. Thank the audience for coming. I know it's a bit late. So this is the end of our screening series for September. We have a film festival coming up, the African Film Festival Atlanta. That's coming up November 19th to the 21st. Our submissions for films are still open till September the 30th. So if you want to submit a film, there's still time. And then we'll make the announcement end of October. Our website for the foundation is the AfricanFilmArtFoundation.org. Please go there, see what we do, donate.
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
Donate.
I did know that.
Up. We're looking for sponsors and partnerships. And again, this has been a wonderful Sunday. I love historians. I'm a historian at heart. I actually studied I did a master's in West African studies. That's how much I love history. I love the retention of African culture in the diaspora.
Yes.
It gives me pleasure to see how we're, just look at us, how we're all connected. We're family. And we're beautiful. I mean, and Black folks
gotta understand that. We sometimes we even separate ourselves. Oh, they're from Africa, or they're from Jamaica.
No, I think things have changed.
Our ancestors all came from Africa. They just were stolen and put in these places before there was Jamaica, before there was the Dominican Republic. These people, they came from Africa. And people needed, before there's a Puerto Rico, those people came from Africa, ancestors came from Africa. People got to really understand and know the history. And I want to ditto what you said. Support the African Film and Arts Foundation. They are a not-for-profit. They don't have money to do all these things. It costs to do it. So I urge you, I plead you, we got to keep the arts alive. Those of you in Atlanta and those that are not in Atlanta listening right now, support, send a check to the African Film and Arts Foundation. They're right there on Tree Lodge Parkway in Atlanta.
Always give the whole address.
All right. So please,
Mr. Mitchell.
This is real. Just like the Apollo, we're not for profit. So I know the importance of donations and getting sponsorship. It's the Apollo would not be there without the sponsorship of these corporations and individuals as well. So I suggest to people, keep this program going, keep the work that they're doing alive, support them. It costs. Everything costs.
Yes, it does. And on that note, Mr. Billy, have a good evening.
Yes,
Osei, thank you very much again, my brother.
Many blessings. Thank you.
Love you both.
I really just have to thank you, Osei, because you are just.
Yeah.
You know, we here. We all in on.
There you go. There you go. Stay well, family.
You too.
Thank you,
well,
Mr. Bishop. God bless you.
My brothers.
Yeah.
All right.
Make sure you send me Osei's contact info. I want to stay in touch with my brother.
Oh, sure.
All right.
I'm going to do that.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bless you.
Yes, sir.